Hello, and welcome back to another BITREP TNG. In this episode, we have myself playing Space Wolves, Lucas, up against Ian, our lovely Californian import that we use for the team tournament. So say hello, Ian, and thanks for joining us for this BITREP.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm from NorCal. I've been friends with Lucas for honestly over a decade at this point. And he's pretty much taught me everything I know about 40k. And then we went to Olympia for a team's event this weekend, and we did well there. But we had some internal disagreements on how a certain matchup would go. So this is what that was.
Yeah, exactly. So for those unfamiliar with the team process and the team event in general that we went to last weekend, Chase hosted the wonderful Pecking Order Brood Wars. It's one of the Pacific Northwest's first team events, as far as I can remember. And that happened in Olympia, Washington on June, I think, 3rd and 4th this last weekend. Wonderful event. And it turns out that we ended up actually winning that event, which was pretty cool. So in the lead up to team events, what happens is a lot of teams will like build matrices and evaluate matchups and then plan their pairing process accordingly. There's a lot more that goes into it than that, but that's kind of a simplified look at it. So we had a lot of disagreements internally in our team of how the World Eater matchup versus Space Wolves matchup would go. This was one of the teams we were most worried about. I mean, there was a lot of steep competition at the event, but one of the teams we were most worried about was the Fellowship of Friends. Linton Rowan plays a very nasty Space Wolves list that we wanted to kind of trial. We didn't get a chance to specifically play this matchup pre-event, but we wanted to kind of, and it didn't actually happen at the event either. But we wanted to kind of take an after-event look at what this would have looked like. So this is kind of a post Brood Wars look at what the World Eater Space Wolves matchup might have looked like in our round 4. So with that in mind, we'll be playing on Abandoned Sanctuaries today. I'll be playing Linton's Rowan Space Wolves with Gilliman up against Ian's World Eaters. So let's take a look at these armies. We'll take a look at the pregame, the kind of deployment setup here, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going forward secondaries wise. So, Ian, take us through your World Eaters list. What are the basic elements of it?
So it's a pretty stock standard World Eaters list that runs Lord Invocatus. He has his Warlord trait. I think it's called Road of 8 Bloody Steps or something to that effect. I have, I believe, 21 8-bound, 9 of which are exalted, and then 1 5 squad, 2 3 squads. I have 4x5 berserkers, and I'm going to be loading them inside of 2 rhinos. I have a knight with autocannons and a juggerlord with the glaive. That's pretty much the entirety of the list. Oh, I have 2 spawn, of course, but I mean, what World Eaters list doesn't have spawn? Yeah, that's the list.
The champions of generating blood tithe, baby. Let's go.
It's true.
It is very true. So nice. Very stock standard World Leaders list. I think the only thing that will kind of varies from what we normally see is the knight. We thought the knight was pretty worthwhile. Ian had some disagreements, but in terms of generating CP and doing a little bit of long range poke, it is a nice tool.
Yeah.
So here's our Space Wolves list, or rather Linton's Space Wolves list from the event. It's a very brutal list with a very low very low unit count. This is heavily proxied, as you can see, despite the fact that we own an inordinate amount of miniatures down here in Portland. None of us actually own that many Space Wolves, so like 90% of this list is proxied. So you'll forgive us that. On the left, we've got 3 squads of 10 wulfen. So this is kind of the meat of Linton's list. It's a big old brick of fight on death dudes, and it's kind of the gist of what we thought would prove to be such a difficult task for the World Eaters to overcome with all that fight on death. So 30 wulfen. We've got Gilliman with his without his warlord trait. We've got a Chimeras chaplain. He knows the 2+1 to hit and +1 to wound chance for shooting, which will go on the 10 Desolators every turn. One of those Desolators is upgraded to have the 3 damage launcher. We've got 2 single Cyber Wolves there in the back right, and then 3 squads of 6 Sky Claws with 1 Combi Melta, 3 Melta Guns, 1 Thunderhammer, and 1 Power Fist. So the standard all Melta Gun Sky Claw loadout. So pretty nasty list. The Space Wolves contingent takes Whirlwind of Rage for exploding 6s and Hungry for Battle for +1 to advance and charge. The The theming here is that the wulfen provide a reroll charge aura, and with Gilliman's +1 to charge, those Sky causing 7-inch rerollable charges out of Deep Strike. So it can kind of overwhelm you with 30 fight on death dudes that run forward while dropping in 7-inch rerollable charges at a Deep Strike that you can't really interact with, while Desolators bombard you from the backfield. So very interesting list. All right, so here we can see that we are playing Abandoned Sanctuaries. This was the mission that we played round 4 at the event, and definitely one that we were very worried about, with World Eaters, GSC, and Iron Hands all being armies that rely to a certain extent on that first turn, either mobility or alpha strike. Having a no pregame move and no forward deploy mission was definitely pretty sketchy. World Eaters in particular really love using that 11-inch pregame move to take board position, and not being able to do that on this mission kind of stinks. But it was an interesting mission nonetheless. Definitely one that I think World Eaters are not favored on against Space Wolves, but it was good to kind of see worst case scenario what would have happened. So let's talk a little bit about secondaries here as we get started. I'm going to pause this just so we can talk about what we've already taken. So for the Space Wolves, Ian gives up plenty of no prisoners points, and I have a feeling I'm going to kill most of his infantry this game, so I decided to take no prisoners. I also took shock tactics. With 3 objectives in the middle of the table, it was fairly likely that I was going to be able to take one back from Ian most turns of the game, if not all of them. So I took shock as well. And my final secondary, I did a little bit of deliberation on. I ended up finalizing on Codex Warfare. After its nerf, it's dropped off in popularity quite a bit, especially for Iron Hands lists. But with so much Assault Doctrine access for Space Wolves, I mean, Wulfen always count as being an Assault Doctrine, as well as the Desolators just bombarding while in Devastator Doctrine. This list also has like 7 or 8 CP to start with, so it's very easy to just plop those guys into Devastator Doctrine for a few extra kills late game. I felt pretty likely that I was going to get 5 for the Dev Doctrine, 5 for the Assault Doctrine. 10 is pretty good, and if I pick up any Melt-A-Gun kills during the Tactical Doctrine, then extra points there is always great. So Codex Warfare ended up working out well for me. What did you take secondaries-wise this game, Ian?
So, I mean, I'm playing World Eaters, so I took Pile of the Skulls. I mean, if I didn't, I'd be literally trolling. Aside from that, I took Raise the Banners High. It kind of sucks on this mission, but I didn't really have a lot of great options because I wanted to take no prisoners against this list. Wulfen give up quite a bit of no prisoners points. I think the list overall gives 13 points on no prisoners,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So no prisoners. I knew that we were going to be fighting quite a bit, and the Wulfen are probably going to be dead by the end of the matchup. So that's a decent number of points right there and then. And then my third secondary, which was Raise the Banners. There's not really a great number of options here. I knew taking banners was probably going to be like a 5 or a 6, but there's nothing else that really looked better, which is really, it's a bummer, honestly.
Yep. So yeah, the third secondary is a little bit awkward, and usually World Eater secondaries are their strength, so it's a bit of unfortunate here. And a lot of that is due to the mission, right? Normally banners would be a little better for you if there were some more objectives close to you.
Big agree.
So yeah. So as we can see, we're playing on Player Plays Drain. That was the train we played on at the Breed Wars event. I won the Defender roll-off, which is wonderful. Got to slam a big old L in the middle, and I also won first turn. So definitely best case scenario for the Space Wolves here.
Playing Sanctuaries, I get Attacker. I'm going second. It's not looking great.
It's not looking great. But the World Leaders have been known to rack up a lot of points regardless of the scenario. So we're going to see how well Ian can do at that. What we have here, for those unfamiliar with Abandoned Sanctuaries, it is definitely not the most popular mission. The tertiary is control the middle for 2 points, kill a unit in the middle for 2 points, and if you do both, you get a total of 3. So what I've done here is put my one loyal doggo, my Cyberwolf lad, right there in the middle of the table to grab me 2 points on the tertiary. In terms of deployment, what I've got are 30 Wulfen in this building, 30 Wulfen at the front of this building.
10 Wulfen, right?
Sorry. Yes. I've got 90 Wulfen in total.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So we got 10 over here on the left, 10 over here in the larger ruin on the right, and then I just moved 10 out to the back end of this L here. The idea being that if Ian chooses not to answer this Cyberwolf, then I'll get 4 more points on the primary because of him. And if he chooses to answer the Cyberwolf, it'll be in melee, and then my Wulfen can do a heroic intervention to get in combat. So yeah, just decided to take a slow turn 1. It's Space Wolves have some of the best Desolators in the game with keen senses, especially with this Chaplain for basically pitting on 2s, wounding up +1 most of the time. And so I decided to take a slow staging turn and do a little bit of damage pre-game with my mortaring. Ends up not actually working out super well. The 8-bound makes some good armor saves, and I end up wounding a guy down to 1 wound, but not actually killing any models. So a bit of a bummer there. So pass to Ian. I got a 2 on the tertiary here. No shock tactics on turn 1. No prisoners is in progress, and my Codex Warfare is currently a 0. So what are you looking to do here on turn 1? You weathered the first turn of indirect pretty well. Only taking 2 wounds is pretty darn good. So what are you looking to do on your turn 1?
So my turn 1, I'm moving the knight forward on my right side because they have a line of sight into the Desolators, and I'm hoping to plink off 2 or 3. And I also know that this next turn is going to be a bit of a swing turn because we're about to start fighting pretty hard. So the less that he's shooting at my 8-bound, the better. If he's going to shoot his Desolators into my knight, I'm kind of happy with that. I need to contest the center objective because for this mission, the tertiary is quite important, and I need to hold that center objective for 2. I need to kill something on it for 3. In this case, I'm going to be moving my spawn forward in a second here to contest the objective, and it's also going to charge the Cyberwolf to try and kill it in order to get my 3 points. This turns out to be a what we can agree to be probably an error.
I think so.
Yeah, I think this is probably an error. I think it opens up the door for a heroic intervention by the wulfen to march up across the board, and they clog up pretty much everything on my center home field objective, and it's pretty disastrous for me. But yeah, right now I'm moving on the right flank. I'm moving left flank. Shortly after, we're going to see the middle flank, I guess. I'm just going to be contesting the middle, and I don't know if we can speed up this.
Yeah, it's mostly just a lot of movement and staging. I wasn't able to actually get onto either one of these objectives here or here. So you have a great opportunity now to raise the banners there and force me to do something about it.
It's true. I'm raising the banners on 3 different objectives this turn, and that's a pretty big deal.
Which is pretty good. Yeah, it does force me to take action early, which if you're playing into a scenario where your opponent has a lot of indirect, forcing them to engage with you can kind of like speed up accelerate the speed of the game and make their indirect less of a factor. So raising these 3 banners is definitely Ian saying you need to play the game with me right now, which is very smart. So yeah, we got the spawn charging forward to clobber that Cyberwolf like the champion he is. And then over there on the right, we have that knight scooting up to take some long-range shots at the Desolators. It's a little sketchy. Strength 7 isn't amazing into toughness 4, and also shooting through the forest and into cover means you're probably not killing that many, but it at least is worth it to try to take the shots while you have them.
In retrospect, I probably should have branched out the 8-bound a little bit more here so that I could have screened out my characters from the wulfen charge. I was scared of the Desolator shooting, but looking at the terrain now, I would be totally obscured by Lucas's L that he placed in the center. So yeah, I should have put my 8-bound way further left, made it way more difficult for them to get into my back characters. If anything, maybe add an inch or 2 to that charge.
Right, yeah, because what's going to happen here, it might not look like it right now, but these wulfen are just behind the L and might look a little bit challenging for them to get into these characters, especially with some stuff in the way. But what we're not factoring in and what we didn't really realize was going to happen until the charge phase was 1 CP Space Wolves Heroic 6.
Mm-hmm.
So these wulfen are actually going to move 6 inches this way at the start of the charge phase, and then pile in 3, and then consolidate 3, and then move 8. So they're going to launch like a 0-inch charge into these characters, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is going to be not ideal. Those characters, they do a lot of melee damage. They support the army really well with +2 to move. So getting them just clobbered immediately on turn 1, or on turn 2 rather, as we're going to see, is certainly not ideal. So we can see that hero spawn doing his duty for Khorne. He's going to go beat the hell out of that Cyberwolf. And then obviously the wulfen will annihilate him. So
didn't you have to roll it?
Yep. So you sort of did your job, right? You prevented me from, Ideally, the spawn would have knocked me off the objective and prevented me from getting 4 more on the primary, but the wulfen actually end up securing that objective for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I do end up getting the 8 that I was hoping to get early game, which is great. And those wulfen are launching themselves deep into your DZ, which is wonderful. You do get 2 points on the tertiary, though, which can't be overstated. That's a very nice boon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was quite happy with at this point. I was thinking, yeah, I'm probably going to lose the 8-bound. They're going to be able to set to defend. That's okay, and I'm pretty sure that they can eviscerate a 10-man squad of wulfen. I wasn't 100% sure on the math in terms of whether 10 wulfen would kill 5 8-bound and both characters. I did not think that they would be able to do it. And we are going to see in a little bit that math is apparently pretty good for the wulfen.
Yeah, wulfen are quite swingy. Their weapons hit on 4s basically, and their 6s double explode. So it can be very iffy, whether or not you get 1 hit because you're a little unlucky, or maybe you get fairly lucky and all of a sudden you end up with 6 hits. It's like, okay, this is pretty ridiculous. So the variance is quite wide. But with them basically just being a throwaway unit to do as much damage as possible, I figured, throw them in, kill the 8-bound. The 8-bound will kill me back. Worst case scenario is I trade the units 1 for 1. Best case scenario, I spike up a little bit and I kill 1 or 2 characters. I'm also moving my wulfen out on the left flank from this building into here. I don't really have much else over here, which is a little concerning. But Ian has definitely forced my hand by raising this banner, and I don't want him to get any banner points that he otherwise wouldn't get if I played passively. So definitely want to shut that down early. I feel like banners is his weakest secondary, and or banners definitely is his weakest secondary, and I think it's honestly quite a bit worse than Codex Warfare. So that's going to be partially where I make up a lot of difference in this game. Is I'm hoping my Codex can be like 6 to 7 points better than his banners. Yeah. So thinking about some deep strikes here, realizing that it's not really worth it. Deep striking over here on the left would just give me some shots on the spawn. Not really that good. Deep striking over here is going to give me shots on the knight, which my desolators are already responding to because they got shot last turn. And we didn't really mention it during your turn, but the knight shot in and killed one of the desolators.
Just one.
So bit unlucky there. Could have been 1 or 2 more, and that would have definitely been worth it, but came up a little bit on the low side there. So we're shooting some laser beams at the knight and completely destroying it. It actually ends up exploding, which is kind of goofy, and deals a couple wounds out.
Yeah, it's only for 1 onto 2 squads, so it's not the end of the world, but kind of sad.
Right. And then, these desolators shoot their indirect into the berserkers that are on this objective. They raise the third of the banners that Ian was talking about over here on the right. So ideally, I'll shoot them off. The banner will still be up, but he won't get the 4 extra points on primary. End up coming up a little bit short there and leaving 1 berserker left. So he's chilling on that objective. And because the berserkers are veterans, they have excellent leadership, and that berserker does not run away. So nicely done there to stay alive. And with the killing of that vehicle that I just did, you actually have 4 blood tithe now. So you can activate your Feel No Pain, which makes all of these kills that are going to happen are on the bottom left side of the board a little bit sketchier, right? Because 3 damage Thunderhammers going into 3 wound models makes it a little iffy. 3 damage Thunderhammers going into 8 wound characters makes that a little bit iffy. So you're definitely throwing a wrench in the math. That definitely got me a little bit spooked here for sure.
One of the things that I was considering when I was moving my knight forward is that if it dies, it does give me the blood tithe to spend for that 6-up Feel No Pain, which, like Lucas mentioned, when you have 3 damage flat weapons and my unit or all my models are 3 wounds apiece, that really cuts into the efficiency. And I was really hoping that I could have at least 1 or 2 models in that center objective or that center home field objective, kind of just, be there, be a threat, force him to respond to it later in the game. At the end of the day, I just didn't want him to be able to clear everything.
Yeah. So I end up going activating first over here on the left with World Eater Fight on Death and Space Wolves Native Fight on Death. Sorry, Wolf and Native Fight on Death. We're basically just pummeling the hell out of each other. There's not a lot of intricacy here. You're going to fight on death where I activate first, and then you're going to interrupt, and I'm going to fight on death your interrupt. So everything's basically going to die here.
Yes.
So these Wulfen collide. They kill the spawn easily, and they also annihilate that squad of 3 8-bound. Those E3 8-bound do an excellent job of fighting on death and kill 8 of the 10 wulfen, which is definitely nasty. Interrupt coming in hot here from Ian, making great effect of the defensible trait. If all models are touching a piece of defensible terrain, then models in that unit can either set to defend for +1 to hit on Overwatch, whichever one remembers remembers all the time. But the other part of that is +1 to hit in melee, and especially against targets that are -1 hit, but even just in general, because these 8-bound hit on 3s with no rerolls, getting them to hitting on 2s for basically free is great. So good use of that terrain trait there.
Yeah, they absolutely eviscerated the wulfen on that punch. They did what, like
killed like 14 models.
Yeah, they
and
killed
because
like
it was an
14.
interrupt, not a fight on death, you were able to activate the 6s, do mortals as well.
Yes.
And that killed an extra 2 models, just pushing it over the edge to make it 100% guaranteed to wipe the squad, which was great. So here we are taking some field no paids. Fight on death happens 1 model at a time, so I'm just using that to my advantage to kill these 8-bound as efficiently as possible. We can see that the first 4 wulfen wiped them out, which is definitely pretty lucky. I got a lot of 6s explode. And then we have these remaining wulfen swinging into the Juggerlords. It's obviously very swingy with the 4-up invuln and all that, but the second guy causes 9 damage on him, pumps him down to 1 wound, and then the third wulfen fight on death there finishes him off, which was great. And then I've got 3 more dudes, or maybe it's 4 more dudes swinging on Invocatus here. Yeah, it's 4 more dudes because the first 2 killed the guy. And they end up taking him out. So big, brutal trade on Ian's home objective. Hilariously, there's a banner up there, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't have anyone holding the objective in any command phase. So the banner stays up. Blood for the Blood God, indeed, as that objective is bathed in like 20 dead dudes. Hilarious. So yeah, a giant bloodbath. So what did we lose there? 18 wulfen, 8-bound, a spawn, and 2 Juggerlords.
Spawn, 2 Juggerlords, yeah. Yeah, I think that's the overall carnage.
Brutal. And we can see there
a lot of tithe.
Us trying to count up the tithe. With the extra bonus point from a character dying, it's especially stonks for Ian there.
I was a little sad here because if I could just have 1 model that I could then use to threaten the center, like it kind of just forces Lucas to respond to it. Like if he puts like a Cyberwolf there, if I have 1 8-bound, that's gonna punch that white Cyberwolf off of the objective. It secures me 3 more points on the tertiary. And we're gonna see as the game goes on that I'm gonna run out of units to do stuff with, because that first unit of Wulfen kind of punched way up. They dealt with way more than they probably should have been able to.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I start to get out attritioned by this list as the game goes on, and it becomes a scramble of how can I get my points? Where can I raise my banners on these angles that are difficult for Lucas to deal with? Yeah, and just hunker down and see how long I can survive on these objectives.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, right now, unfortunately, you're down to a 4. Get your head out of the way. But we got this 1 Berserker left over here, right? So he's actually giving you that 4. So
yes.
Excellent done there. That was great news. Leave. And then, yeah. So what do we have? Do we have many reserves? Do we have extra stuff in Deep Strike that we can call on, perhaps? Or what are the World Leader reinforcements looking like? Do we have anything up our sleeve, tricks-wise?
Yeah, I have 1 unit of Exalted 8-bound inside of Deep Strike, and of course I still have all of the Zerkers inside of both, or I have 10 Zerkers in the left Rhino and 5 Zerkers in the right Rhino. And yeah, so that you can see me taking the Zerkers out on the left side. They're going to be looking to raise that banner. I choose to actually forego that and to raise it with the 8-bound instead, because there's still a Wulfen on the other side of that ruin. And there's a Wulfen right here, somewhere right there. And I didn't want to charge that with the 8-bound because 1 Wulfen can definitely swing hard enough to clear out all of those boys. And I generally just want to have those guys for when the Meltas come down, because I know that's an angle that the Meltas are going to be looking to attack, and they would absolutely eviscerate Zerkers. They might not eviscerate Exalted 8-bound. So that was the thought process I had going into this left side here. We're going to see that didn't quite work out. That Wulfen also definitely punched up in terms of how many attacks it should have been able to generate. Yeah, unlucky, I guess. In retrospect, I probably should have charged it with the 8-bound and just raised it with the Zerkers and prayed that I land my 4-up invulns. But hindsight is 2020.
Right. Yeah. So there are definitely some. So I mean, that turn of trading, you did clear out 20 wulfen, but losing both juggers and most of your normal 8-bound means your mobility is a lot more limited, and you lost a lot of units as well, which is definitely sketchy. But so that's not looking amazing, but your board position is still looking decent if you can reestablish yourself on these objectives. So I like what you did here, pulling back this rhino, getting on this objective, and that single Zerker also ran into the rhino before it drove over there. So you have a rhino as well as 2 different OPSEC squads. So that is making this objective very hard for me to steal or target in general. So very well done there, repositioning yourself onto that. You're also establishing yourself well onto this left-hand objective, getting the Exalted 8-bound onto it in cover, and then one of these units will end up charging in as well to finish off that wulfen while the banner's being raised. So get the banner back up, reestablish the primary. Well done there. And then this objective, obviously looking a little sketch. Stepping out means getting desolated, and you don't really have a plan for that this turn. So you're kind of just reestablishing yourself inside the ruin, with the ability to move out and threaten in the upward left direction, but not really being too worried about being on the objective right now because that's just going to get you killed.
Yeah.
Right? So this is going to be a good turn of kind of just resetting the tempo of the game after that very violent top of 2, and kind of getting your banners back up.
I'm also looking to deny shock tactics in this turn.
Yes.
I think I'm looking at the right objective, and if I put anything there, it's absolutely going to get eviscerated, so that's not really an option. I don't have anything to contest the center for this turn, which kind of blows for me in terms of tertiary, but it means that I don't really have to look at that for shock tactics purposes. So pretty much whatever I put on the left objective, I'm hoping it's going to survive until my next turn. The Zerkers aren't really going to be able to be seen by the Desolators if they were to survive this charge. And the Exalted 8-bound certainly are not going to be seen by the Desolators, so they just have to survive the Melta shots that are coming down at them next turn. Same with the Rhino down on my home field objective. Realistically, it's kind of a bet on whether or not the Rhino or the 8-bound are going to be able to survive the Melta shots coming down.
Right. Yeah, those Meltas can definitely be really swingy, especially with the 4-pin bull and the 8-bound. They can just really go wherever. No one really knows. But yeah, so the Berserkers charge into that Cywolf and unsurprisingly annihilate him. And what we're going to realize here was the correct play, which we're going to do, is just to consolidate off the objective in order to deny shock tactics, which was definitely a great play.
Yes.
So in order for shock tactics to be scored, I have to take an objective back that you controlled. So you never controlled the objective. Here we are moving the Berserkers. Then I can't get the +4 points there. So you miss out on 1 point of tertiary. You'll get 2 for killing unit on the middle objective. But you'll also deny 4 on shock. So
yeah,
spending 5 Berserkers there for a Cyberwolf might not seem like a great trade, and it's definitely not, but it does put you ahead on the points game by a little bit. Nice. So I did get lucky over here on the left. That single Wulfen popped off and rolled like 2 6s to hit on his Thunderhammer and ended up with 5 hits or something absurd and clobbered those 5 Berserkers.
I think you passed me like 7 saves, and it's like, all right, cool.
It was pretty silly. So yeah, he completely destroyed that Berserker unit, which was very funny. So at this point, with these Berserkers right here, I'm just assuming that they are going to die. And that means that trading resources wise, Space Wolves are definitely low on units. I've got 3 Skyclaw units in Deep Strike. But my army presence is just in this ruin right here, right? I've got the 10 Desolators, the Chaplain, Gilliman, and 10 Wulfen, and they're all in that blob back there. So I need to start, taking down Ian's banners, making some forward progress onto these objectives, and making things happen. Otherwise, we kind of didn't really talk about what our predicted outcomes were for this game, but in my opinion, it was slightly Space Wolf favored. So I wanted to try to make things happen and push that advantage fully into my favor. So what I'm going to try to do here is like flip multiple objectives here. I want to take down this banner that's on the right side of the board. That is a charge that the Wulfen are going to do because they move 8 and they have +2 to charge and a native reroll. Making that like 6-inch charge or 5-inch charge for them was very likely. And they will take out those 3 8-bound there. Now that Ian has a couple offensive buffs, it will be kind of sketchy to charge those 8-bound because they'll hit back super hard with the fight on death. and probably clear most of my unit. But as long as one wulfen remains alive, I'll take down that banner, and Ian will have to contend with that next turn. And with no more shooting, you'll have to kill them in melee, and the fight on death will be nasty.
Yeah, I think if the 8-bound fight on death and they are set to defend, with 6s explode, they probably kill like what, 8 on average, 8
It's
or 9.
most of the unit for
8
sure.
or 9, and then it would force a morale. Now Lucas obviously has an auto pass morale still, and he also has plenty of CP to use that. So looking at this, I'm definitely thinking, okay, I really do need to punch hard enough to clear out all 10. Otherwise, he's going to auto pass, rip down my banner, deny me that primary. I guess I wouldn't get in the primary anyway, but still, it's really powerful for him to just have presence on that objective at the start of my turn. So yeah, here we are. He's about to do his charge in after he, eviscerates my Exalted 8-bound on the left side objective with his Melta.
Across the board with the funny Desolators. 1 CP, ignore the heavy penalty and ballistic skill penalty with Keen Senses is just disgusting. I don't know why Wolves needed to have the best indirect in the game, other than maybe Iron Hands, but apparently they did. Yeah, so then over here on the left, we have the Sky Claws. I moved into the Tactical Doctrine this turn. I figured because I was dropping in all my Melta Guns, this would be the time to get a couple points out of Tac Doctrine kills. So I dropped some AP5 Melta on that Rhino and destroy it. So that gets me +1 point. And the Desolators killing those Exalted 8-bound on the left-hand objective will get me another 2 on Devastator Doctrine kills. So I'm up to 4 for Dev Doctrine kills, 5 for melee kills, and then 1 for Tac Doctrine kills. So feeling pretty good there. Wulfen ended up making their charge. We have the Chaplain charge in as well to soak the Berserker Interrupt / fight on death so that Guilliman doesn't get punked for no reason. Yeah. And here we are activating. Obviously, I'm going to go with the Wulfen on the right-hand side first. Ian's going to fight on death. This is going to be a big old trade fest. What ends up falling out is obviously my Wulfen clobber those three 8-bound, and the fight on death ends up taking out 7 of the 10 Wulfen. So definitely pretty nasty, but having at least 1 model left means that I'm good to go for taking down that banner, which is great news. Banner obviously still up on the left objective, although there's no World Leader models there. So that'll get him 1 extra point at the start of his next turn, and then the Skyclaws will take that down in the following turn. Guilliman obviously will also kill those Berserkers on the middle objective, which means that I'll get 3 more points in the tertiary and establish myself on that middle objective. And at this point, Ian is definitely running out of resources. We've got the single Berserker down here, along with his 5 compatriots in this Rhino. We got 3 Exalted 8-bound here, and then we've got 3 Exalted 8-bound coming in at a Deep Strike. But we're definitely running out of stuff, so you need to make sure you're getting all the points you possibly can here, which you're going to do, for sure. So yeah, just racking up the points here. I don't end up getting Shock Tactics because Ian did a great job of making sure he was not on this objective or this objective. He was on this objective, but I didn't take it back. So nothing on Shock Assault this turn, which is definitely not looking ideal. I'm currently on a 4 on it on turn 3, which is not amazing. But overall, not feeling too bad with the board state. We're way up on resources, so as long as I can start taking down these banners and maybe get a couple more Shock Assaults in the late game, we're good to go.
Yeah, the nice thing about taking Shock Assault is that it makes it kind of difficult for me to take objectives because it plays into the math of, do I really want to even be on this objective because you're just going to nuke me off of it, and then I'm giving you 4 points for free. So I can really only take objectives that I think I'm going to 100% be able to hold until the start of my turn. And right now, with the amount of resources that I have, it's not looking like I can really hold very many objectives at all. Other than maybe my home field objective. So that's really limiting my options for gaining primary.
Yep. Yeah, so the primary is looking rough for you, like you said, and part of that's a mission, right?
Yeah.
This is the reason why Advanced Sanctuaries is so rough, is because anytime you come to a midfield objective, you're either getting Desolated or Wulfen. You can't really hang on to anything. Whereas, Space Wolves at least have some tools for staying on the objectives. My home field has been safe this whole game so far, as we're going to see. These Exalted 8-bound Chads are going to end up coming down in my backfield, which is really nasty, and picking on that final Skyclaw unit that's in my backfield. And Guilliman is another great tool, right? Because, with the 3-up invuln, he can be kind of sketchy to kill. He is a great tool for just hanging out on objectives. Unfortunately, he just has a 3-inch heroic. So the one hero berserker that's in that rhino is going to yeet himself out onto that middle objective and raise a banner defiantly in the face of Gilliman. So he's standing there raising the banner, which is absolutely hilarious, as his exalted 8-bound brethren come in the top left hand corner of the battlefield in preparation to charge those Sky Claws. You don't actually have +1 to charge up right now.
Yes.
And with the number of units that are left on the battlefield, Pile of Skulls, which you need to reserve, 9
at this point
type for?
At this point, I need 6, and I think the die there says I have 4.
Yeah.
So if I use 3 here, then and if I fail this charge, I'm not sure I'm going to get all the pile I need. So I kind of just say, all right, cool. I have to make this 9-inch straight out of Deep Strike, and then I roll an 11.
Boom.
And here we are. We're measuring to see if I can get my Exalted 8-bound to touch the Desolators, because the Exalted 8-bound have this nifty little piece on their data sheet that says on a 4-up, you do not get to fall back. And if those Desolators are stuck in combat with Exalted 8-bound, they're not going to be having a good time.
That's definitely true. So yeah, unfortunately, with the distance that the Exalted 8-bound had to cover, even with the 11-inch charge, they were not able to tag the Desolators.
Unlucky.
Yep. So they will definitely clobber the hell out of those Sky Claws, though. So what we have here, excuse me, are the Exalted on the right-hand side, pummeling those remaining 3 wulfen. The fight on death is a little nasty, but we do end up having 1 Exalted remain. He's just going to hang out behind the building there on 2 wounds, like the champion he is. I spend my final 2 CP to interrupt with the Sky Claws there, trying to get in Gilliman reroll range, realizing I wasn't quite close enough. So we're just swinging some hammers, hoping to hit here. You end up making the invulns on the multi-damage, which was great. And then the chainswords popped off a bit. Excuse me. And end up actually killing one of the Exalted, which is nice. Makes them a little bit easier to deal with next turn. But even 2 Exalted 8-bound will annihilate 6 Space Marines, no problem. Especially with 6's explode and auto wound, which you had at this point in the game. So those guys completely destroy those poor Space Marines and take my home objective. So I'm getting a 4 here on the primary for holding the middle objective. Very clowny. And here we're both down to scraps, right? You've got 5 Berserkers and a Rhino. You've got 2 Exalted on the top of the board, and then 1 Exalted on the right-hand side of the board. And I've got 12 Sky Claws over here in the middle of nowhere on the left, Gilliman in the middle of the table, and 10 Desolators in my home field, or 9 of them, I guess. So I'm just trying to get as many points as I possibly can. This is probably going to be my Melt-A-Gunners on the left, going for some long bomb advances to try to Melt-A-Gun your Rhino, which will be lovely. And then the Desolators kind of moving out and trying to spread out toward the middle 2 objectives there. Ian does not have a banner up on that right-hand objective now. In fact, the only banners we have up are, let's see, here and here. And I guess we have one that the champion raised right there. But he's about to get completely annihilated by some Desolators. So that's going to be lovely. Taking down these 2 banners on the midfield objectives is going to be great. And then I'll just go for some long-range Melta shots on that Rhino on Ian's home field just to crack it open and be irritating. Gilliman is going to head back and go for a charge on those Exalted 8-bound. The 4 pinvuln is definitely sketchy for him because he only has 7 attacks. But I figure, he's my best piece for killing them at this point. With the charge, Ian did a great job of hiding them as shallow an angle as possible behind that building so the Desolators can't really shoot them. Could have probably put all the indirect into them, but the flip side of that math is if he makes a couple too many armor saves, then all of a sudden that's 4 more points on the primary because that 1 Exalted champion stays alive and gives you 4 points, then runs to the middle, kills a character, gets more points, more blood tithe. Yeah. Definitely not worth risking, and Gilliman's just going to go clean those guys up instead.
Yeah.
So the Sky Claws move out onto that objective, take down the banner, and end up Melt-A-Gunning that Rhino pretty good. I think I get it down to like 2 wounds, and then the Desolators, who are currently, are they Dev Doctrine? I don't think they are. But either way, sometime in the next turn or two, they're going to put themselves in Dev Doctrine and get an easy kill, which will give me my final point on Codex Warfare that I'm going to get this game. So I'll get 5 on the Devastator, 5 on the Assault, and then 1 for Tactical for a total of 11, which isn't too shabby at all. I also want to crack this Rhino open because there's 10 Berserkers hiding in there, and that's an extra point on no prisoners. And because your War Leader list is a little bit lighter on no prisoners than some other ones, it's going to be important to kill them because that's very likely going to put me over the threshold for my extra bonus points. So it's very likely going to be +2 points on prisoners there. So I want to crack that open sooner rather than later. Here's rattling in all the indirect, which ends up actually destroying the Rhino. Those Berserkers will come spilling out onto the objective, and will still give you your 4 points on primary, which is great. And then Gilliman will end up making his charge into those 8-bound and finishing them off. So just in terms of scoring here, on my turn, I will end up getting Shock Tactics for taking my home field back from you, which is great news. I end up getting 1 more point on Codex Warfare, and then no prisoners is obviously still in progress. We're also have been having a little bit of a battle over the tertiary in the middle of the board, right? With you taking it back from me to deny 4 points, and then me killing that single berserker means I get 3 points on the tertiary. So it's it's quite a bit of give and take in terms of who's getting what points there. But here, we saw those berserkers spilling out, and they're really the only unit you have left at this point, other than that 1 exalted 8-bound champ over on the right hand side who's going to go raise a banner for Khorne. Gilliman consolidating after doing a great job killing those guys, and here we are at the going into the bottom of 4. So what are you thinking here as we move into the very late game? What points are still on the table for you?
Okay, so I have 1 unit of 5 Zerkers in that center ruin, and I have 1 model of Exalted 8-bound. The role of the Exalted 8-bound is to just raise a banner when he can get the opportunity to, which is right now. Because the only way it's ever going to get ripped down is if the Desolators find a charge into him. Otherwise, I'm going to be gaining 2 points on that banner. On the center, I have the 5-man Zerker squad that are going to look to gain as much points on the tertiary as possible. Perhaps deny the primary from Lucas. I believe there's a chaplain on the other side of the ruin here that these boys are going to be looking to deal with. Pretty much, yeah, I'm looking to contest. I have the banner and that's my own home field objective. I'm looking to contest as much as I possibly can with this 5-man unit of Zerkers. They roll a pretty nasty charge. I think it was
It's a 10-inch.
A 10-inch charge, and now I'm seeing this, if I can branch them out so that they can touch the left objective. But we came to the conclusion that they wouldn't be able to do that. It's important to try and do that because Lucas has no obsec on that left objective. I would have been able to hold him. Is Gilliman on that backfield objective? Is he?
He is back here.
Yeah. So I would have held Lucas to a 4 if I was able to touch that objective.
Yep.
But it was not possible.
Yeah, definitely worth exploring the option though, and it was super close. Based on the positioning of where Gilliman and the Skyclaws were, the issue was that some of the models could get closer to the Skyclaws to steal the objective, but other models on the squad would have to get closer to Gilliman, which would mean that their squad would exit using coherency, which is obviously not possible. So definitely worth exploring the option, and it was super close to working out, but ended up not really being a thing. So the Berserkers end up just piling into that chaplain and completely destroying his existence. As Berserkers do, and they are going to, of course, again, do they end up ending the turn on the objective?
No, I pile off of the objective.
So I don't remember if I get. I don't think I get shock tactics this last turn, but either way. Some Skyclaws are going to maneuver around in my final turn to tear down these banners. What happened over here was we kind of had some deliberations over what this Exalted should do. And I think at the end we kind of realized that he should just move out onto that objective and raise a banner because it's very unlikely that I'm going to get to him. And that's +1 point. Because your thinking was you have end of turn primary, right? So having a guy behind the wall will probably matter a whole bunch because you'll get to move out and get 4 points.
Yeah.
But then I pointed out that the only model I have to shoot other than these 5 Berserkers, which are going to die in 2 seconds, is that Exalted 8-bound.
Yeah.
So the Desolators will destroy him.
Yes.
So there's kind of no point to not just walking out and raising the banner right now for +1 point. And then we have Gilliman moving onto that middle objective. some Skyclaws maneuvering around to take what shots they can. Unfortunately, some unlucky melt-the-gun rolls means that only like 1 or 2 of the Berserkers died, so I had a little bit of a panic attack when the Berserkers blood surged into Gilliman. But fun fact, they don't actually, I don't think the Berserkers get their charge bonus when they blood surge.
They do not.
Yeah, so no +1 to strength or attack means that Berserkers probably wouldn't kill a full health Gilliman.
Didn't come into play because you did charge them later.
Yes, I did actually charge them with the Desolators in a heroic attempt to, well, the Desolators zap the Exalted 8-pound, obviously, but with a decent enough charge, they could get onto that objective and tear down that banner. Ended up not really being a thing, though. We had to look up a rule. What happens when your opponent has no models left and you go to consolidate? Our conclusion was, I don't think you can, because you can't actually get closer to the closest. So, yeah, you're kind of just stuck. So the Desolators made their best attempt at a charge to take down that banner, but ended up not really being a thing. And here they are, swinging in to try to clobber the Berserkers. They end up actually not doing any damage at all. So the Berserkers fight into Gilliman and scratch the paint on his armor a little bit.
In retrospect, I probably should have fought into the Desolators for no prisoners points.
Very true.
Like the odds of me killing Gilliman here are next to 0 because I only have like an Eviscerator and a Sergeant left at this point?
Yeah, 2 or 3 guys left.
Yeah,
not enough to kill the 3 of them. Well, no, Gilliman.
Yeah, so I should have fought into the Desolators, try and farm as much no prisoners as I could have. I probably could have. I think I scored like 67 wounds, so they probably could have scored an extra.
Probably would have gotten an extra point.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then obviously Gilliman finishes off these final 2 Berserkers, no problem at all. And so the World Leaders do end up tabled. But World Leaders do a great job of scoring points, even while getting tabled. So it's going to end up being a close game. Let's talk about points in the final turn. I did not end up... I don't think I ended up shock tacticsing. We'll check the scorecard in a minute. But I do get a couple points in the tertiary. And I get my final point on Codex Warfare as well. And then in your final turn, you'll continue piling the skulls for +5. That's a 15. It always is.
Yep.
Your no prisoners count is decent this game. I do have a fair amount of infantry left, so I think you end up getting like an 8 or a 9 on it, something like that.
Something like that.
And then banners ended up being pretty good as well. You got your home field for most of the game. I think it was 4 turns, and then you got a couple of banners over here.
I got 1 on the left and 2 on the right.
2 on the right. So I think you ended up at 7.
I think I ended up at 7 as well.
Yeah, so it ends up being a pretty close game. I will pause this now so we can just read off the final scorecard and kind of just discuss some closing thoughts. So, myself playing the Space Wolves, I ended up with 33 on the primary. A lot of this was due to the very excellent scores I was getting on Secure the Sanctuaries. With all the trading of units that was happening in the middle, it was kind of bound to happen that I would get some 2s and 3s on that and kind of prop up my primary score. Ian gets a 21 on primary. He also does very well on the tertiary, but with the fact that a lot of those objectives in the midboard were not very safe, and with how volatile this matchup is, it's hard to actually stay alive on the objectives. So he gets a 0, 4, 4, 4, 0 on the primary, which is definitely not ideal. He does well on Pile of Skulls, and like we said, No Prisoners is an 8 and Banners is a 7 for a total of 30 on secondary. By contrast, I get a 12, 12, 11 on secondary. So shock, I do actually end up getting in the last turn. So I think that was just us forgetting to move those Berserkers off the objective.
Yeah.
Probably should have gotten an 8 there. And No Prisoners, I get a 12 since I end up tabling him. And Codex Warfare is an 11. So what is that? Effectively a 31 on secondary because -4. And for you, a 30. So secondaries were mostly tied. It was... a lot of this game came down to primary.
Yeah.
And how hard it was for you to stay alive on the objectives.
Big agree.
Wulfen and Desolator shooting in.
If we did deny that shock tactics, it comes down to 74-61, which in the context of teams is a 12-8 victory.
Yeah. So definitely something that we would consider a yellow, basically more or less a tie matchup. Unless something very catastrophic happens, it's going to more or less be a tie.
Yeah.
So definitely you proved yourself here. We were thinking it was going to be much more Space Wolves favored, but a lot of World Leaders has some great tools to stay in the game. Their secondaries aren't even that amazing on this mission, and you still did a good job of keeping the game close. So well done there. All right. Any closing thoughts? Or I definitely enjoyed this game. It was a lot of fun. It was a very volatile game. It was funny to watch just the absolute catastrophe that was the top of turn 2 when we just like smashed into each other.
Yeah.
Everything died, and then the bottom of your turn was like, I guess I'll raise one banner.
Yeah, pretty much.
Everything close to each other was just dead.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, the biggest mistake I made was not screening out my characters. Like, I wouldn't have been shot at with the 8-pound if I just made that charge a little bit more difficult, and maybe that makes you reconsider, like, do you really want to risk, like, I don't know, what would it be, like a 6-inch charge into the characters?
Much further to go around.
It makes it could have played a pretty big role. Realistically, you probably make the charge anyway, but yeah, this matchup slightly Space Wolves favored, I would say, especially on this mission, and especially when they get Defender, and especially when they go first.
Yeah, everything went right for me here. We still kept it close.
Yeah, so I think yeah, it's a pretty tie-ish matchup. Yeah, pretty happy with the way that the game went.
Nice. Cool. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this BITREP. I think we're recording this in the middle of the week after Brood Wars, so there will be some more Brood Wars recap content coming this weekend, so stay tuned for that. Actually, by the time you're seeing this BITREP, it'll probably be a past live stream, so go ahead and watch that if you're interested. And I think that's all. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye.